Hey guys, welcome back to another video on my channel, and today I'll be doing a roundup of two mouse pads from Padsmith, the Genesis and the Crucible V2. First of the two pads I'll be covering is the Genesis Pro and the Non-Pro. For the two pads, they have the same surface, but the difference between them being the base, and that affects it a lot more than you would think. The Pro uses a new Gen 2 alpha cell base, while the Non-Pro uses a foam base from Taiwan. The surface on the Genesis is easily one of my favorites, and is extremely soft and satisfying on the skin, and was really comfortable for the longer sessions, as well as it has little to no texture on your mouse feet at all. I did find that on both pads I'll be covering today, feel much better with full-size skates rather than dots. It is a speed pad and is a tad bit faster than the Crucible, but still not quite as fast as something like the Raiden from Artisan, for example. The weave is tight and has a premium feel to it, and is sort of akin to the Ninja V1, for example. It's not quite the same, but it has some similarities. Feels a bit more consistent overall. The Genesis Pro is going to be my new main pad for quite a bit, not to mention it has a beautiful design that stands out in the best way possible. The stitching is also surface level and has the smallest abrasion to the skin, but after a few weeks worth of use and your arm rubbing on the stitching down here, it softens up the fibers quite a bit and that issue goes away entirely. The base differences between the Pro and the Non-Pro, like I said before, change the feeling of the Genesis more than you'd expect. Usually when a pad offers multiple bases for the same surface, it doesn't change too much, but with the Genesis I noticed that felt a bit more premium and consistent with a firmer base. The new Gen 2 alpha cell bases are more premium than the version 1 we saw on other pads like Crucible. It has a more consistent feel across the board in terms of consistency, and for example my Ninja V1 had some issues with wavy and inconsistent height on the base. Editing Marcel here, what I'm trying to say is that my Ninja V1 had some small divots throughout the pad. It wasn't completely level, and there were some small dents in some certain areas that would limit the premium feeling of the base. But the new bases feel great across the board. I'm a big fan of the new firmness, and it sticks to my desk personally really well. As you can see, my monitors are shaking and I'm trying to move it, but if I go out of my way to try to move it, they move just fine. This is for those people who move their pads very often in between sessions, for example. Now, if I'm in game, my arm moving across it, as you can see, it doesn't move at all. But if you wanted it to stick like glue, a little moisture under the pad goes a long way. And this goes for all pour-on pads, not just these pads here. With the normal Non-Pro Genesis, they dropped the price by $15 by using this foam base. And the foam base itself is actually really good and sticks with a little bit of moisture, but for the specific surface, I felt as though a firmer base was necessary, and I didn't enjoy the softer nature of the foam paired with the surface. Your preference might be a bit different than mine, however. But with the Crucible Pro V2, I feel it's the opposite. I think the Crucible V2 would greatly benefit from a softer base, as the surface feels a bit more open and has a lot more texture on mouse feet, for example. I do believe a soft or X-Soft base would soften the feel on mouse feet and maybe even make the experience more premium overall. The V2 Crucible surface doesn't differ a whole lot from the V1 in terms of performance, but the new version is a tighter weave and has much better durability long term. The comfort on the arm and overall use, I prefer the version 1, but the new changes are necessary, as better durability is just a trade-off that's definitely worth it. Inherently, because of this surface, it always feels a bit stiff. It's really hard to explain, but the surface itself feels tight, like hard, really firm, not in the usual sense that you would expect from a base like this. Like I said, it feels stiff on the mouse feet, but after a break-in period of about 2 weeks, the surface definitely opens up a bit and becomes a bit more enjoyable. I would label the Crucible as a balanced speed pad with a texture that helps a lot with control and leans a bit closer to the control category, but still I wouldn't quite put in that category of control. The texture feels very unique in the sense that it feels open and wide compared to some pads like the LGG Hyperion, which feels tighter and smaller texture-wise. I tested Jade's, Core Pads, and Tiger Ice on both of these pads, and I came to the conclusion that full-size mouse feet just provided the best and more premium experience over dot skates for these surfaces. In short, I think the Genesis is better with a firmer base, and the Crucible is better with a softer base. I have yet to try a Padsmith product though that I legitimately don't enjoy, not to mention they have some of the best designs money can buy, but that doesn't mean they're perfect. For the Genesis, one of the gripes I had throughout my usage was I felt it lacked a bit of the speed I prefer in the dynamic friction, and it would benefit from a 5% speed increase overall for tracking. But that should do it for today's video. Leave a comment below which design you prefer out of these two pads, and have the day you deserve.